Good evening, everyone. Hey, it is Shooter. We're going to go over primary waves, growth stocks for October 2024. Of course, at the end of our presentation, please do review our disclosure. Now, as we head into the middle section of October, I don't see why this risk-on sentiment should change unless this Iran issue with Israel expands beyond borders. Did see a little pop in oil this week or this weekend. And of course, Milton is become a hurricane in the Gulf of Mexico. However, I'm not seeing that in LNG yet. However, it's on my radar. But, just going to the NASDAQ and the SPY briefly, what I'd really like to see at this point is a retracement to the 38.6 Fibonacci extension. A retracement, simply because that would elevate the flat that we're in, because the counts that I have basically have us staying in this range, within about $15 to $20 to the upside and about $30 to $40 to the downside through most of October and maybe even into the end of the year. Now, just touching base on cryptocurrencies, I'm very excited about BRICS adding the blockchain as a legitimate form of exchange between those countries and China, as well as Russia moving forward with Bitcoin as a form of settlement for their commodities. Those are some very positive developments as far as adoption for crypto. However, I still think we stay in this range that we are until we get some kind of FOMO to get us up and out of it. So I can't really tell you how quick we break out, but I do think we do break out by the end of the first quarter is sort of my thought. So let's jump into the growth stocks. Now, I'm sure many of you have a position in NYCB. Now, as far as any additions, if it dips back to about 950, that's your spot to add. That would be a back test of our primary wave 2. I don't believe that occurs at this point. Our primary wave 3 should extend, right to the base of the 382 fib extension. Now that's where we've rejected higher prices. So that would, that $14 range is where I would look at potentially trimming or selling a few covered calls to reduce your position size there. Right now, I'm looking for a target of maybe 1955 to the upside, but I do expect a back test of the 23.6 fib on rejection of that resistance band, and that's my thought there. AST Space Global. Now, I have one count that's down around $10. In other words, we could have more downside, really $12.56, I believe it was. So if we break below this 1711, we're going to back test this breakout. We probably do an overshoot, only because it's a small cap and not everybody's trading this. I shouldn't say the only, I have a bias bullish because we confirmed on this last high, and we have not put in a divergent high. So, what do we look for when we have a confirmed high? We look for at least one more higher high with a divergent RSI. So as far as open positions, I don't know that I would trim here if you've held this long. However, I would consider an entry or adding with a tag of 1859, and that becomes support once we get that test. Now, this candle right around 22.95 could be construed as a back test there. However, this still doesn't look done to me. We haven't broken above the breadth of the highs of these candles. So there's a good possibility that we push up and then come back down. This becomes an ABC. So we just want to keep tabs on that, watch where our resistance currently is, and whether or not we see any rejection. As far as Square, now I put this in mainly because of BRICS and Russia, really adding to the adoption thesis of Bitcoin and their holdings, obviously Bitcoin. However, we really need to get out of this flat. We're starting, we've been here since really July of 22. So we've been here 2 years, long flat. We keep rejecting prices here at this resistance band. So, my thought would be by second quarter 25, we need to be out of this. Otherwise, we likely break down, and there is more going on with the micro and macro that I'm aware of in Square. That's my 2 cents. However, our target wave 3 is still up at 133. Unless we close below the primary wave setup at 5509 on the weekly, we're still in it to win it. All right, Caesars. Did we get a bid on the casinos with China QE. Now, here's my thesis on China. I don't think China can quit here. I think China's got to keep going. I think either they can pull themselves out of this or they're looking at an extremely severe recession and possibly a depression because the data coming out of there is horrible. This real estate sector is falling apart. And, honestly, if there's no buyers, the value's nothing. It's zero because they've built so many hundreds of thousands, I believe it might even be millions, like they have 20 million additional condos that nobody's living in. That's just absolutely overkill. And there's just no way around that. And, sooner or later, they're going to pay the piper. So either they get their economy growing where they can get their consumers buying, their properties again. Otherwise, I think it collapses and breaks down. So I think for the next quarter, we're going to continue to see the money rolling in. If they don't get out of this rut that they're in by the mid first quarter, I would think we turn around. And this would be one of the stocks that would turn around. So for the time being, I'm looking for a breakout above 50. In Caesars. Our primary wave 3 target is at 79.37. So this stock right now, same with Win, I didn't put that in here because obviously it's not in our group of on the VSL, or at least I don't believe it's on the VSL, but it's not in our punch card stocks. But the upside here to me is that we break above that 23.6. That golden box at the 50% FIV at 88.21 is just right there. It's staring us in the face. All we need are the numbers to be coming in as far as consumption, Mecca everywhere else, South Korea, and the other markets that will benefit from this China boom, and I think casinos will be one of them. So whether it be cash secured puts here, buying $45 or $50 or $60 calls out in a little time. If you're going out dated, all right, you're going to do January to March, right? I would do 55 to 60 calls just to give yourself a little margin as far as the money. Outside of that, you could also just buy common shares, scale in from here because we do have a nice divergent low here on this low. We had our confirmed low, divergence in our low because this was our confirmed. But we did not have divergence on this low. But we did have it here. So to me, that indicates that the uptrend is started and we now have buyer exhaustion, which is confirmed by this divergence. So I think there's no reason this doesn't continue to push. That's my 2 cents. All right, let's look at NVOX. Now, I actually like this for a swing, but I don't like the spread because really I only can measure this bar. We could measure this bar and say 50% back is up here around $22, $23. But at this point, I see it 3 and maybe $14.31. So I'm hesitant to throw that in as a swing, but it's there. I'm looking at it. I like the idea. I like the move. Last week was a huge candle. We'll have to see how that plays out, whether that holds. The only thing I would consider here in ENVX is selling some cash secured puts or buy $12 January to March right at the money. Reason is you don't need to put the risk on the table. You're not going to make a fortune on those calls, but you may make 8, 15, or 20% during that time frame. If we really go nowhere and we just chop out a little bit to the right, build a flag, I don't think that's the case. Most of the time when we pushed up, we get a little decent back test. But I don't think that happens to our 3 until our minor wave 3 gets printed. So I think you still got a little room. So that's why I want to stay, tight because 14.31, if you have $12 calls, you'll make 20% on those pretty much. And then once we get that top, just make sure if I don't cover NOVIX between now and that 3, because I really don't have a way to flag that. Well, actually I can. I'll put an alert on there when we get to that 14.31, but ask me about a stock to review it if you have an open position and you need updates. That's what I'm here for. So that's my take on NOVIX. And let's look at Rocket Lab. Very challenging chart here because my minor wave 2 is way down here, back below the 8-day. I don't see any reason why we don't come off here first. The challenging part is this is our 1 and then we kept going, so it's an overshoot. However, very euphoric band, clear adoption. They're having no difficulty raising capital, as Kirk had mentioned, for their next launch. So my hopes is we get a 50% back pull here, gives me $70 or $7.50 for another entry long leading into the next launch. That's my hopes here, at least for me as a swing trader and a scalper here. looking at that. But I wouldn't hesitate to sell November $12 covered calls, because we also have this 3 right up here, right? See the 3 and then back down to the 4. So I think we build out a flag if we don't break down. So the most likely case is we break down, but you want to build and hold a position here in Rocket Labs because the upside. Realize this is only our intermediate wave 1 at $14.22. This is our intermediate wave 3 at $26. So we got an intermediate wave 5 way up here off the chart around $40 for our primary wave 1. So this has, I could see this stock, and this is crazy for me to say because I don't usually go out here on the limb and say it. But this could be a $200 stock if we have some mass adoptions in the satellite for, a thesis works. Bottom line, we've shown that it is going to work. The question is how much capital they actually get coming in off of this and how quickly. So I think that's going to be the key. So that comes back to Kirk and micro and macro on this, but I can see it in the count. I just wanted to share that. All right, let's look at Spira Global. Now, I've not covered this in a little while. As long as we stay above that 626, the new primary wave setup, we should be good heading towards our 3 at some point. The one thing that I don't like about this is the confirmed high, and then we put it in a lower here. I don't like that because that's a trend change. So we, had our high, lower low off of that, lower high, lower low, lower high. So we break below that 626. I would not hold through that unless you have the room to the upside. We'll have to get a better count on that once we, honestly, this could come right down and test the low at 280. And honestly, from $6 to 280 is a little too far for me. So I'm not going to suggest that you carry it through that. Now, by all means, if we break down, maybe add some covered calls. However, a breakout above our prior high on this flag, would get me long because that really is confirmation. Confirmation comes in at a breakout of $15 up here. That sort of confirms the bullish case, and then it really is confirmed at 1940. So, the hard part here is the breadth of this buyer exhaust. Huge. That's a big move for such a small face value stock. So my concern is this is ultimately is A, right? This is our B, and then we get a long C down here. It becomes a penny stock. That's the only challenge here. Again, I'm going to refer to Kirk with the micro and macro, but that's my 2 cents, just the way I'm looking at the chart. Holistic. All right, let's look at quick. Now we got a nice pop off this 1 to our minute wave 2 around $11, I believe. So it's basically a double from our, not quite 30%. However, it didn't print. We're a little shallow of that, so we could reject and go down, put that in, and then go. So if we got a little time on this. We could be in this. If you own common shares at $10, this could be second quarter 2025 before we get down to this 568, unless we just have complete buyer exhaustion kind of event where they give up on this, some kind of news that just blows it out. And in that case, we're going to take out the lows and we'll be down towards that end of the world level if that's the case. So, volume came in decently, but notice that our largest candle is the sell. Our biggest buy candle was here, right? And then they sold it right here, right? So to me, the volume analysis, it's bearish. So that's just my thought. All right, MP Materials. Now, this also is attached to my China thesis because China's going to have to invest capital somewhere. And the most likely thing is for them to buy raw materials, minerals. What does MP Materials Corporation and what is the stock doing? It got a huge bid off of China, right? So I think we break above here. We at least back test to 2171. Then we see what we do, whether we reject price at 2455 and this extends lower, or we actually are in our cycle wave 2 heading for our cycle wave 3 up around $90. Huge upside if China actually is successful at reigniting their economy. So we will have to see. All right, now let's look at AAOI. Now my count came in at 1785, which I had a couple weeks back or last month. The count 2, the primary wave 2, according to the count today, says top is in. However, RSI really isn't telling because we have no divergence. So there's really no top. So even though it's over 70, it's overbought, which is why we got the pullback. 78.6 fib held, from a bearish standpoint, continues leg. I look for continuation to the downside on a weekly close below 1210. So that is your sign. That is your stop. If you're long, it's below 1210, I'd be trimming or at least selling some covered calls. But there's a very good possibility this flips bullish. Really, just we got to get above this 382 resistance. There's a huge band here. We had huge seller exhaustion. I don't remember if it was 2009 or 18. I'm not recalling because time frame doesn't give me that on the chart. But that's the thought, and that is what we have for this week, folks. Great trading. Until next.